And I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 3 English lesson on action verbs. So, we'll be doing our grade 3 English lesson on action verbs. And before we start with our lesson, we are going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once we've logged into aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we are going to select the subject of language arts and then grade 3. Once we have selected the subject of language arts, grade 3, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of action verbs. And remember, a verb, it's a doing word, right? It's a doing word, it's an action, right? So we are going to find out more about action verbs. What are action verbs, right? And also a few examples and how we can also basically put those action verbs into sentences. So we are going to build sentences also with these action verbs. So our chapter is action verbs. The subject is English, which is also language arts, grade 3, and the lessons that we're going to be focusing on today under the chapter of action verbs is to use action verbs as well as to identify action verbs. So we're going to use action verbs as well as to identify action verbs. And remember, doing words. Action is like a doing word. It's a verb. And we see that action verbs are words that describes the action of a subject in a sentence. So action verbs are words that describe the action of a subject in a sentence. And the actions can be either physical actions, such as either to run, or it can be mental actions, right? It's like things that's in your mind. And those can be your thoughts, it can be things that you think, right? So remember, we have physical action, and physical action is literally the actual action that you're doing. Like something that you are currently doing, if you are listening, then it means that that is something that you're doing. If you are busy writing, typing, that is something that you're doing. However, you have mental action, right? And mental is to do with your thoughts and things that you think. So, yes, our thoughts are also action. And action words are sometimes called action. So, action verbs are sometimes called action verbs or doing verbs, words. So, that's basically just saying that a verb is a doing word. And if we look at a few examples, right, of action verbs. If we look at a few examples of action verbs, we have run, walk, jump, talk, to sing, speak, eat, drink, cry, skip, pull or push, fetch, give, make, bake, try, either to bring, teach, something that I'm doing, study, right? Those are just a few examples of action verbs. So these are a few of the action verbs. And we said another word for action verbs are doing words, which means that it is verbs, right? All right. So now we are going to create a few sentences, right? If you look at certain words that, let's say, certain action words or action verbs or doing words, we are now going to use some of those words and we are going to create or write down a few sentences. And if we look at the first one, for example, run, then we can then maybe say, let's say, the girls run away from home, right? So the girls run away from home. So it's almost like asking yourself, like, what did the girls do? Because that will basically answer your question of the action verb, because it's a doing word. So we can then say, All right, so we are also doing our lesson on aplusstudents.ca. We are doing our lessons on aplusstudents.ca. So we're basically going over to aplusstudents.ca and we're going to use action verbs. And action verbs, it tells you what a noun does. The noun is also where we can say is the subject. So the noun is the subject, right? Guys, can you see the screen? Can you see basically what's on the board? Like what's on the screen in front of you? Okay. All right. So we are okay, we sorted. All right. So an action verb, it basically tells you what the noun does, right? And the noun is also, we said it's what the subject does, right? And when we say that the subject does, that is why we say an action verb is a doing word. It's a doing word, right? So now it basically tells you what the action is, or tells you what the noun does, doing word, right? And if we look at a few examples once again, it will say she ate an apple, right? So basically, the word ate is something that she did, right? She ate an apple. We smile. So what are we doing? We smile, right? That's all we do. We smile. And the word smile is an action verb because it's something that someone is doing, right? And remember, we said that with action verbs, it's not just physical, right? Action verbs are not just physical, action verbs are also mental, right? In the sense of it is things that we think of, right? So our thoughts, things that we are thinking about, those are also part of action verbs. Verbs that, and some actions are hard to see. So certain things that are hard to see, right? It says that he thought hard, right? And this is where we spoke about some of our action verbs are mental. It's our thoughts, it's our ideas, it's what's in our mind, right? It's things that we are thinking. So he thought hard, right? You can't see that someone is really thinking unless the person now really has a thinking face and they like really put on that thinking face. Other than that, you cannot really see that this person is really thinking hard. Unless it is now a test and you're trying to like you scratching your head, rubbing your head, like you are actually showing that you are now thinking. But other than that, remember we basically use our brains every single day, which means that generally we think things, right? We think about certain things, we think about decisions that we make. So yeah, it says he thought hard, right? And we like the show, right? Like the show. And like is basically just something that you enjoy, right? It is something that you enjoy. It's not like pressing the like button on either YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram or something, right? This is more like just liking something. So now it says we need to complete the sentence with the best action verbs. So we need to complete the sentence with the best action verb. An owl, its wings as it lifts off the ground. So what does an owl do when he wants to fly away? Or if he wants to fly? What does he do with his wings? An owl. What do you think an owl does with his wings if he wants to either fly away or fly up? Because it says an owl, its wings as it lifts off the ground. Yes, and we can say that the owl flaps its wings, right? And when he flaps his wings, then it means that he wants to, it's almost like trying to get himself up, right? Because here it says, an owl flaps its wings as it lifts off the ground. So he's about to fly. So now he's trying to lift himself off the ground, so which means that he needs to flap his wings. It's like if you're in the pool, right? And you're swimming. If you don't, for example, move your arms, right? Especially if you're by the deep side, and then it means that you are going to go down. But as soon as you, let's say, flap your arms or lift the arms or do something, some movement with the arms, and then it means that you are going to go up to, you know, your head will again be above the water. So flaps is correct. So well done. So birds and owls, they flap their wings. Mimi's rabbits, on the carrots. What does Mimi's rabbits do on the carrots? What is another word for eating? Eating, but if your mouth is very small, then what do we call it? So in this case, we will then say that the rabbit, they nibble. So nibbles on the carrots. It's yes, nibbling, but with double B, right? So nibbles, nibbling on the carrot. Especially like if the mouth is very small. So it's as if they are eating bits and pieces, like small little pieces. That is like nibbling on it. So Mimi's rabbit nibbles on the carrots. So now it says we need to complete the sentence with the best action verb. Mr. Duran, by the door for Mrs. Duran. So Mrs. Duran, by the door for Mrs. Duran. What did he do by the door for Mrs. Duran. If someone is about to still come and you are just standing by the door, you are what for that person? Opened is also correct, but if you look specifically at the wording of the sentence, right? So we're going to go with waited. Can say waited or waiting. So it said Mr. Duran waited by the door for Mrs. Duran, right? So waited. Opened is also correct, but if we put it in the sentence or we look specifically at the sentence, then it says Mrs. Duran opened by the door, right? So we can then basically make our own sentence and says maybe Mr. Duran opened the door for Mrs. Duran, right? So which means that opened is also one of our action verbs. But if we specifically look at the sentence that we had to complete, then waited or waiting is the correct answer, right? So Mr. Duran waited by the door for Mrs. Duran. And opened, there we basically created our new sentence that is basically grammatically correct when it comes to um, how we basically the sentence construction, right? All right, so now we're going on to our test. We're going to have to complete the sentence with the correct action verb, the correct doing word, right? By choosing the correct answer, either ear or we're going to choose chatter. The girls on the phone for hours. So the girls ear on the phone for hours or the girls chatter on the phone for hours. So what did the girls do for hours? Remember, when it comes to an action verb, we said an action verb is a doing word. So you need to ask yourself, in order to identify the verb, is to ask yourself, like, what is the person doing? All right, so we can say the girls chatter on the phone for hours, and chatter is correct because you cannot hear. Okay, we can also say chat. Chat is perfect. It sounds correct, right? So the girls chat on the phone. But remember, we can't say the girls chatting unless we're saying the girls are chatting, right? The next one says Miss Farrell's green necklace. Do we say Friday in the light or sparkled in the light? A necklace, a green necklace. So we can say Miss Farrell's green necklace sparkled Yes, and sparkled is correct. So sparkled in the light. So sparkled is correct. So well done, sparkled is correct. Mimi's rabbit. Do we say fruit on the carrot or Mimi's rabbit nibbled on the carrot? So Mimi's rabbit fruit on the carrot or Mimi's rabbit nibbled on the carrot. All right, so we can say Mimi's rabbit nibbled on the carrot. So Mimi's rabbit nibbled on the carrot. And nibbled is correct. So well done. Nibbled is correct. Jeffrey loves peas and potatoes, but does he, do we say he hates or he dinner carrots? He hates or dinners carrots. Jeffrey loves, listen to the word love, right? Jeffrey loves peas and potatoes, but if you don't love something, right? If you don't love something, then you hate it, right? If you don't love something, you hate it, which means that Jeffrey loves peas and potatoes. So we said Jeffrey loves peas and potatoes, but he hates, and hates is correct. Because if you don't love something, then you hate it. Carrots. Miss Tran, do we say Miss Tran courage the problems I got wrong on my homework? Or Miss Tran corrected the problems I got wrong on my homework? So Miss Tran, do we say Miss Tran courage the problems I got on my homework? Or she corrected the problems I got wrong on my homework? So we can say Miss Tran, yes, she corrected. Because remember courage, right? It's like you're being brave, courageous, right? It's with courage that you do something. But corrected is if something was wrong and then we make it right. So corrected is correct. So well done, everybody. And then Abby, her hair in the bathroom. Did Abby bed her hair in the bathroom? Or did Abby brush her hair in the bathroom? So Abby brushed or Abby bed her hair in the bathroom. All right, so now we say that Abby brushed her hair in the bathroom. So well done. Well done. So now we're going to identify action verbs. And I feel like there is no need to go over what an action verb is again, but action verbs, it tells you what a noun does or what the subject does, right? And remember, an action verb is also a doing word. So we see that we have an action verb, and an action verb is a doing word, right? And it tells us what the noun does, and the noun is our subject, right? So we need to select the action verb. Mom, oh yeah, the spider creeps across the floor. The spider creeps across the floor. What is the action verb that we can identify within the sentence? The the spider creeps across the floor. So spider creeps across the floor. What are the words, or what is the word that we can identify as an action verb within that sentence? And yes, if we identify certain words, for example, like creeps. So creeps is correct. So creeps is our action verb that we identified. Mom brushes her hair. Mom brushes her hair. What is the action verb within that sentence? Mom brushes her hair. We need to identify the action verb, the doing word within that sentence. Mom brushes her hair. If we look at the sentence, Mom brushes her hair, we need to identify the action verb within the sentence. All right, so if we select one, we can say Mom brushes her hair. So Mom brushes her hair. So Mom brushes her hair, and we identify brushes. So brushes is correct. And then Jackie dives into the pool. Jackie dives into the pool. So Jackie dives into the pool. What is the action verb within that sentence? Jackie dives into the pool. Something that Jackie is doing. Jackie, who is the noun, but also we call Jackie the subject. And if we identify it, then we will say dives. And well done, dives is correct. So we said an action verb, it's a doing word. Now let's go to our test. So we're going to begin our test right before we end our lesson. So we're going to select the action verbs. Kate washed the plate. So Kate washed the plate. So Kate washed the plate. Is it the or washed? All right. So if we can select the action verb and then we say it is washed. And washed is correct. Well done. So the glass bowl cracked. And cracked is another one of our action verbs. So we said Mr. Clark dashed to the airport. Dashed, like in a flash, to the airport. So Mr. Clark dashed to the airport. And dashed is correct. It's like he sped off, right? So he dashed. So dashed is correct. And mom brushes her hair. Mom brushes her hair. Is it brushes or is it his? Brushes or his? So we can say brushes her or the hair. and brushes is correct. Dad carves the chicken for dinner. Carves, it's like cutting or something, is the answer. Carves or dinner? It says Dad carves the chicken for dinner. Carves. All right, so if we want to select our action verb and then we can say carves. And carves was correct. And then Frank draws a lot of pictures and we say draws is our action verb. So that is now the end of our lesson where we used action verbs. We identified action verbs and we said action verbs, it is something that you're doing. So action verbs, right, are things that you do. It's an action that any person does, right? Specifically that the noun does. And the noun is the subject, can either be someone that does something, right? All right, so that is basically now the end of our lesson, grade 3. Thank you very much for joining the class. Thank you very much for interacting and really being involved. I really appreciate that. And I hope that you're going to have an amazing day further. At the moment, we only have English and maths. We do not have any social sciences or physics. All right, goodbye.